Baker Shield is a Hunter District competition for under 14 players. 35 teams began in the competition at the start of the year, with a winter recess before the semis. Raymond Terrace batted first today and scored 5 for 127 off its 35 overs, with Rodney Maytom top scoring with 36. Best bowler for Waratah was Matthew Trail, who took 3 for 30. Waratah began on a bad note, losing an opener first ball. When Glenn Pelton had Stephen Corns caught behind, Waratah High were 5 for 5 and Pelton had 4 for 5. Pelton's sister Michelle also took to the field, making it a family affair for Raymond Terrace. The 13-year-old is a top cricketer, having represented the Hunter Open ladies team last season. Waratah were eventually all out for 41. Their best bowler, Matthew Trail, also the top scorer with 33. Outstanding player was Raymond Terrace speedster Glenn Pelton, who finished with the impressive figures of 7 for 12 off 8 overs.
Next January will mark yet another turning point in Australian history. Already plans to celebrate the Bicentennial are well underway, but none so grand as the reenactment of the First Fleet. After entering a newspaper competition, 24-year-old Yvonne Whitewood won the prize as a crew member aboard one of the First Fleet ships, and it's turned out to be a fortunate twist of fate. She's now studying for her offshore yachtmaster's certificate at the Newcastle TAFE College, and the final leg of the 3-month expedition, beginning in Mauritius, will be an important part.
Most people complete the theory, but very few have the chance to complete the practical. Which is a minimum 2,500 nautical miles, and we do about 3,000 nautical miles between Mauritius and Fremantle, so I'll be sitting for my full certificate, I hope about October next year.
Yvonne could also be described as taking on her family's sea legs. It's nearly 200 years ago since her husband Peter's great-great-uncle sailed with Flinders aboard the Investigator. The voyage set out to map the coasts of Queensland and New South Wales, but also took on historical significance.
It was also on this voyage that they discovered that Tasmania wasn't a part of mainland Australia. He was first mate to Matthew Flinders. It's quite an interesting family background.
Patriotically inspired, Yvonne has designed a commemorative tapestry marking the First Fleet's voyage. The product will be marketed nationally, another Newcastle first in needlework, and will reflect the feelings of most Australians.
I've inscribed it with proud to be an Australian, which at this stage I do feel very proud to be an Australian.
A young Newcastle woman has won the Bicentennial chance of a lifetime and is about to set sail. The 24-year-old will join 2 others from the area taking part in the First Fleet reenactment.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
There's been a gaming and betting squad in the Newcastle area for the past 20 years. Most recently it's been housed in the new police building in Maitland. In the past its main job has been undercover detective work aimed at catching SP bookmakers, illegal card games and related vice. The present squad only recently achieved full strength, 6 constables and 2 sergeants. At issue is the effectiveness of a local betting and gaming squad. Local police say they stand by their record, but senior police in Sydney want the system decentralised. The record this year includes 28 betting arrests, 40 unlawful card game charges and 16 arrests for soliciting. There are another 65 charges laid on related traffic and drug matters. NBN's racing expert says the squad, combined with a better TAB, has almost seen the eradication of SP bookmakers, once a thriving industry.
Many years ago you'd find an SP bookmaker in every second hotel and a few clubs here and there, but these days practically non-existent. I think, the bigger SP bookmakers are out of business, mainly because of the advent of pub tab and club tab, and also the TAB have got their act together and they provide punters with a good enough service, to keep them betting on the TAB and not with SP bookmakers. But I'm not going to be naive enough to say there's none around at all. There is, a few SP bookmakers around the Newcastle and the Hunter area, but nothing to what the extent it was, many years ago.
Do you put that down to the gaming and betting squad and their actions?
Yes, they've done a great job, John, in curtailing SP bookmaking.
Local member for Maitland, Alan Walsh, wants the squad to stay, based in his electorate. He says communications are improved with a regional base and local knowledge is invaluable.
Yes, I'd be concerned if they were transferred from this region and sent to Sydney or to operate from Sydney. I've raised the matter with the Minister for Police, George Paciulo, and he's calling for a report, and I hope to have information from the Minister when Parliament resumes in a week's time.
But the man who's put the plan before the Commissioner says an undercover operation loses its effectiveness when the police live and work in the same area for too long. The state boss of the squad, Superintendent Ernie Shepherd, says the 8 police will be given the option of going to Sydney or joining the uniform branch in Newcastle. He says if the plan goes ahead, there'll be a commitment to a frequent presence of police through random and rotated flying squads. However, the commander of the Northern Region, Assistant Commissioner Nixon, is a known advocate of regionalisation. He wants control of a squad in his northern area.
That is a matter for the Commissioner of Police. I support the factor that I should be in charge of that particular area. But that is a matter of government policy, and naturally I bow to what the Commissioner and the government does. But it is a very vexed area. It is crime without a victim. And it's been one where there's been a lot of controversy over the years, and unfortunately so, it has been the one which is more liable to corruption than anything else.
Police urge 3,000 people to leave their homes and stay in emergency centres.
If you've got a police emergency, put your animals in your house, close your windows, turn your air conditioners off, take your family and go to the medical centre.
Petroleum company workers later managed to seal the leak. A man who carried a bomb into Oslo police headquarters was killed when the device exploded as he tried to escape. 6 other people were injured. Police have not identified the man or his motive. French customs officials have foiled what's believed to be the IRA's biggest arms smuggling operation on record. They seized a ship, the Exxon, its 5 crewmen who were armed with Kalashnikov rifles and 150 tonnes of weapons and explosives. There is speculation the arms came from Libya and were loaded in Malta. The ship was supposed to stop in Gibraltar but was intercepted by police off the French island of Barts. Police have not opened the crates of arms as it's believed they are booby-trapped.
"200 volunteer firefighters from throughout the area were expected to attend last night's meeting at the Madawi Bushfire Station. However, yesterday's burst of heat meant a spate of bushfires, and many brigades were still fighting them or on call and unable to attend. Only a small number therefore turned up to discuss the firefighters' next move in their battle with Port Stephens Shire Council. For 6 months this year, the council employed a full-time staff member to monitor emergency radios and assist the head fire control officer of the volunteer bushfire brigade. Previous to this, the control officer's wife had filled the role on a volunteer basis, a position she still carries out on weekends and after hours. 3 weeks ago, the recently elected Port Stephens Shire Council decided to scrap the position as a cost-saving measure, a move which has incensed the firefighters. They say to operate effectively they need a full-time staff member, and it's too much to expect someone to fill the position 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on a volunteer basis. Last night's meeting resolved to call more public meetings for later in the month and initiate a public awareness campaign. So many turned up for the council's public access meeting that even in the expanded chambers, many were still left standing, clearly illustrating how important an issue the proposed development is to the public. In December 1985, Lake Macquarie Council passed a development application for a 34,000 square metre shopping centre at Glendale. Now, Hooker Projects, the Sydney company behind the plans, believes the site has much greater potential and has enlarged its application to 102,000 square metres. They wish to build a $250 million complex containing not only the usual range of shops and department stores, but also a cinema, bowling alley and daycare centre. The company would like to open the giant enterprise in September 1990. However, while the developers had some obvious public support last night, retailers from areas around Glendale are less enthusiastic about the company's plans. Gary Marr, chairman of the Glendale subcommittee of the Cardiff Chamber of Commerce.
If the centre or a large development was to be in the form of consolidation of an existing centre, whether it be Wallsend, Toronto, Charlestown, any of the other existing designated commercial areas, then we would have no opposition to it.
Michael Loney from Hooker's Projects, however, claims that retailers who are against the development are taking a narrow view of the proposal.
We're not just talking about in terms of an isolated one suburb, we're talking about the provision of shopping that has been required and totally needed by the population of the southwest of the lake, and not only that but a much broader area.
After several hours of discussion, the council passed the development application with the additional requirements that the project be completed by the end of 1990 and that the next 3 years be used to assist Cardiff Shopping Centre to be competitive. The council's recommendation will now go to the Minister for Planning and Environment, Bob Carr, who will make the final decision.
Good afternoon, I'm Belinda Borisov. Pelton Ellalong miners, currently in their second week of a strike over work practice changes, met today to discuss the possibility of returning to work. We'll bring you the outcome of that meeting tonight.
For all the news,
Join us tonight
at 6.
Tonight we'll bring you a story on the beginning of the HSC. Students all over the Hunter and Central Coast packed into halls and drama theatres for the first English paper.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
"300 Pelton Ellalong miners are striking. More than 140 of them attended today's meeting at the Cessnock Showgrounds. After a heated debate, the miners remained divided over whether to return to work on Wallsend's conditions or to stay out. The final vote was 86 in favour of continuing the strike and 60 against.
The attitude of the company is that they require us to return to work first and then they'll have a meeting with us. The attitude of the men clearly here today, with quite a bit of dissent, is that they require first the conference, a report back to the men, and then a return to work.
The Wallsend Mine Company claims the mine's viability is at risk because of the drop in export prices and increased production costs. It wants to drop manning levels and change demarcation areas. Mr Gilbert says the strike is having a bad effect on the miners.
Well, it's got to have some effect, certainly. Monetary-wise, I've got no doubt that the tactics of the company were employed at this time of the year to benefit their cause. Psychologically, it's a strain certainly on the men and their families, and they've got some quite large moral decisions to make.
He doesn't know how long the men can afford to stay on strike.
This dispute in itself is quite serious. There are major changes asked for at the mine, and the principals of the men themselves will have to decide that. It's very uncertain.
Newcastle City Council first commissioned Bruce Mackenzie in 1976 to carry out a study of Blackbutt Reserve and report on its use and possible future. As a result of that report, vehicles have been banned from some parts of the reserve, and the council is still considering whether to remove all caged animals, a measure strongly urged by Mr Mackenzie. In July this year, the council again invited Mr Mackenzie to visit the reserve, and last night he presented his findings to the council. While he is optimistic about the reserve's future, Mr Mackenzie is critical of several aspects of the park's current state. He again strongly urges the removal of all remaining caged animals, claiming their manner of captivity is degrading both to them and their surrounds. Mr Mackenzie is also critical of proposals currently before council for a kangaroo and koala enclosure in the park. He says to be done properly, these projects would require a great deal of area and are therefore not feasible. The consultant was quick to point out that his report this time was based on only one day's appraisal, and that as the only current management plan was the one done by himself more than 10 years ago, another was urgently needed to give the park future direction.
Submissions for the Bar Beach Pavilion include a proposal by Moylan and Sharp Constructions to demolish and rebuild the structure. That may be a problem under the provisions of the Coastal Protection Act, and Council will have to talk with the Public Works Department to see if any of the tenders can be accepted. Town Clerk Barry Lewis says all 4 tenders fall outside original council specifications. The guidelines required a restaurant in the current lease area, a kiosk on the beach, premises to be vacated by 1 a.m. and no disco. Mr Lewis says although the submissions don't comply with the guidelines, they were of a very high standard. He believes tenderers put forward what they saw as the best possible solution to operate the pavilion and provide a tourist attraction for Newcastle. At this stage, Mr Lewis would recommend that fresh tenders be called. However, he says there is a slight chance, if discussions with the Public Works Department are fruitful and one of the current submissions can be accepted, the pavilion won't be up for tender again.
At 11:30 this morning, 2 bandits armed with sawn-off shotguns and wearing balaclavas entered the Commonwealth Bank through the rear door. They jumped on the counter, ordering bank staff and customers to lay face down on the floor. They then raided 2 tellers' boxes before getting away in a 1975 Holden sedan with an undisclosed amount of money. The car was found minutes later, dumped in a nearby laneway. It had been stolen in Newcastle late last night. Residents from near where the car was dumped say the 2 men then got into a red 1972 HQ Holden sedan of beat-up appearance. Anyone seeing a car fitting this description should contact their nearest police station. Meanwhile, late this afternoon, bandits struck at the Westpac Bank, only 2 doors from this morning's hold-up. No details are available at this time, and it's not known whether the 2 hold-ups are connected.
In recent times, community policing has taken on a new role. With the introduction of regionalisation, the State's Force hopes there'll be a closer bond between the local policeman and his community. Today, interested people were shown some of the finer details of the day-to-day operations and were given a guided tour both in and outside the Charlestown station. And for some onlookers, it was their big chance to have a ride on one of the high-powered BMW Pursuit motorbikes. Tomorrow, Newcastle Police Station will hold its open day, and according to Senior Sergeant Don West, it's a time when everyone can benefit.
Of course, it brings the public to us, and years ago it didn't, and I think we have improved a lot in that area over recent years, and of course it will improve more, I feel.
You've been in the force 29 years, you must have seen some changes.
Tremendous changes, I have, Belinda, yes, and I must admit the last few years, and there's more to come, I understand, and I think they are for the better with community policing and neighbourhood watch systems that's coming into the force now. We are improving, I feel.
The National Safety Council of Australia has launched a Black Friday Road Safety Week in Newcastle today. The campaign will attempt to change driver attitudes in the Hunter region, which Safety Council officials say are responsible for one of the highest road death and injury rates in the state.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
When the Departments of Public Works and Water Resources jointly announced a $120 million sewage scheme for the Hunter and West Lakes, the Lake Macquarie Council was forced to come up with its share of the bill. A detailed study revealed that the existing sewage scheme on the west side of the lake couldn't cope with the growing community. The $60 million West Lakes project will be split 3 ways between the Lake Macquarie City Council, the Hunter District Water Board and the Department of Public Works. But before any decision is made on where the sewage plant will go, an environmental impact statement is to be compiled and Council will need to find the money. Last night the matter was referred from Council's Finance Policy and Resources Committee to its Budget Committee. Today Town Clerk John Rankin said that Council was not in favour of raising existing rates and would this week undertake a detailed review of its works and services policy. The findings will be put to Council at its next meeting.